but it looks like RFK was actually helping Kamala Harris more in these battleground states. So if he's not on the ballot there, that could actually give Trump a boost.
What could happen if RFK decides to drop out of the race?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think we did an analysis of this, and again, going back to those big seven battleground states, because the national numbers, they don't really matter that much. It's what would he do? Because for a long time he was, struggling to get or getting petitions to get on the ballot. That's a huge part of our process. You have to get a bunch of signatures. He delayed a lot of those filings because to give the Democrats less time to challenge them in court. You can actually challenge the signatures on these petitions. And so he did make it onto a lot of these states. He just actually pulled out of Arizona. And so his name will not be on the ballot there. But so if you look at those seven battleground states, in two of them, Kamala Harris has a small lead. And the addition, Michigan, Wisconsin and Michigan. With the addition of RFK, her lead grows. Not a lot, but by about 0.5% to 1%. In two other states, Nevada and Georgia, Trump has a small lead. And when RFK and the other candidates are added to the ballot, his lead grows by a little bit. But there are three states actually, the two main and most important ones, Pennsylvania and Arizona. Trump currently holds a really, really small lead in those states. But when the third-party candidates are added to the ballot, it actually tips those states in Kamala Harris's favor. And North Carolina is the last one. Trump has a small lead there of about a point. And when the third-party candidates are added, that race goes to tied. So it's very, very close. But it looks like, RFK was actually helping Kamala Harris more in these battleground states. So if he's not on the ballot there, that could actually give Trump a boost. And, again, these states could be decided by 5,000 votes, 10,000 votes, 15,000 votes. And so without him on the ballot, it could be very, very important.
So following the convention, how does it look like in terms of the election ahead of November? What are the polls saying?
Well, right now, Kamala Harris is leading Donald Trump in the two-way race in our Real Clear Politics national average of polls by 1.5 points. That's a pretty significant increase from where the polls were when Joe Biden dropped out of the race on July 21st. He was trailing Donald Trump by 3.1% in the average. So it's about a 4.5 point swing just over the last month or so. She's ahead by 2 points when you add in third-party candidates, including Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Jill Stein, and Cornel West. And then, of course, in America, we don't have a national election. We have a state-by-state election. There are 7 states that are going to decide this race. They're the sort of big 7 battleground states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. And in those 7 states, Harris leads in a couple, Trump leads in a couple, but very small margins. The leads are not huge at all. And if you take an average of those 7 states, I think Trump's leading by 0.1%. I mean, that's how close it is right now.
Do you think that this convention is peak Kamala? She's just had a great few days in terms of the media, and it looks like she's had a bit of a boost of momentum and so on. But as we get closer to the election, perhaps the polls will tighten again.
I do expect her to get a little bit of a boost out of this convention. I wouldn't be surprised if her lead in the national polls went up to 2.5, 3 points. But I don't expect that to last. I think the race will get closer. We'll sort of revert to because we're just a very evenly divided country. These states have been the same states that we've been battling over for the past 3 presidential elections at least. And so I do think, plus I do expect that Kamala Harris will get a little bit more scrutiny in the media. I mean, she's expected to at least do a sit-down interview with someone by the end of the month. We'll see whether they ask her tough questions. But she won't be able to avoid Donald Trump on that debate, which is currently scheduled for September 10th. She will have to stand on her stage and go toe-to-toe with him and defend her record and her positions and explain, why her record over the last 3.5 years and how she wants to lead the country forward. So I do expect it'll be a little bit tougher from this point moving on for her.
So how important is that debate with Trump in terms of the race so far?
I think it's huge. I think it's actually going to be another critical moment in this campaign because, again, Trump's a pretty good debater. I mean, he says he is kind of all over the place, but he's also pretty good, I think, at pointing out, his opponent's shortcomings, and I think he'll do that with Kamala Harris. but she's also pretty good. I think she'll be fine on the debate stage, but it will be the first chance for folks, and maybe the only chance actually for viewers to get a look at the two of them on stage, unfiltered by any sort of media coverage. And so I do think that's going to be an important moment. And by the way, we have early voting in the elections. What, less than 11 weeks away, almost 10 weeks away now. We have early voting that starts in some states as early as a month early, so 4 weeks. So the voting's going to start happening pretty quickly in some of these states.
Why did her approval ratings go up, or seemingly go up? Maybe you can talk about this, after she announced her candidacy, because if you look at the polling when she was vice president, she seemed pretty unpopular, but now she's kind of become more popular in Americans' eyes.
Yeah, I mean, there's two reasons. Number one, she's not Joe Biden. She's not Donald Trump. And so I think she was weighed down by Joe Biden, and a lot of the sort of, his approval rating wasn't great either. And so, there were a lot of concerns about, his age, his mental acuity. None of that applies to her. And so I think the fact that, Democrats were sort of moping around, feeling very down in the dumps about this election. And so the enthusiasm that she has injected into particularly Democrats is real. And I think that's why you've seen her approval rating shoot up. I think the other piece of this is the media. I mean, there's just no getting around it. The coverage that she has received has been nothing short of adulation. From the cover of Time magazine to all of these, the Washington Post, New York Times profiles, and all of these things. There was a study that was done last week by the Media Research Center. It's a conservative outfit that tracks media coverage. I think her positive coverage during the week leading up to the convention was 84% positive coverage, only 16% negative. Donald Trump's coverage over that same period of time on the major networks was 89% negative. So you can see that this has been a part of the campaign. She has gotten a boost in part because of how she's been sort of handled by the media in this country.
I know this question, you're probably asked it all the time, but if you're a betting man, I mean, what would be your prediction ahead of November if the election was held today?
I try to stay away from that because the cloudy ball, or the crystal ball, is pretty cloudy these days. I mean, if you'd asked me that question a month ago, I would have felt pretty confident in saying, listen, this is Donald Trump's race to lose. He was leading nationally. He was leading by 4, 5, 6 points in a lot of these battleground states. This is now back to an absolute toss-up race. I mean, really, it very much reminds me of 2016 with Kamala Harris ahead nationally by, a point and a half, 2 points. That's about where Hillary Clinton ended up. And then, razor thin margins in these battleground states. I truly think it is a jump ball, as we like to say here. And it will come down to, not necessarily policy as much as which party is better organized and can find their voters and find those ballots and get them turned in, whether it's drop boxes or absentees or it's called ballot chasing. And the Democrats over the last couple cycles have proven that they're pretty good at that. And Republicans haven't been able to match them in 2020 or 2022. So I think if I might give the edge to Democrats just based on that alone, but honestly, it's really too close to call.
And do you think that Trump has been struggling to define Kamala in the kind of national mindset? Like, how can he label her? How can he attack her and so on?
Yeah, I do think they have been struggling with that. And in part because, she presents real challenges. Joe Biden was a fairly easy target. Kamala Harris is much more difficult. It's much more dangerous to try and, call her, use sort of derogatory nicknames and the like. And again, it's also very hard to break through when the media is, portraying him so negatively and her so positively. It's a completely different landscape, and it changed essentially overnight. And so I do think they have been struggling. I think they're getting closer to where they want to be in terms of, trying to frame her and define her. But obviously this last week was all about the Democrats defining her, and I think they did a pretty good job in Chicago.
So what would be a successful way in your mind, if you were advising Trump and the Republicans, what's a good kind of label on Kamala? What's her weaknesses?
Well, I mean, and look, this isn't a revelation. I mean, I think everybody has been saying basically the same thing, which is, there's plenty of ammunition there based on her past record and even the few proposals that she has rolled out, this idea of trying to use price controls and price caps to prevent gouging from corporations, was an idea that even the Washington Post editorial board and some of her allies in the media said they panned it. They said it was terrible. So, but stick to policy. I mean, there's plenty there, and Trump, I think, his problem is that he'll give a 45-minute speech and 40 of it will be spent on attacking her on policy, but then he'll spend 5 minutes attacking her on her looks or her identity or something, and that becomes the headline, and some of that other stuff gets obscured. I do think calling her Comrade Kamala is fairly effective in terms of communicating that she's going to be someone who's progressive and left-wing and even radical, and promoting some socialist ideas. That's how the Trump campaign would like to label her. So I think that is probably for them a step in the right direction. But it's just hitting her all about policy and her trick, what she's trying to do, and Trump shouldn't be, they're focused on trying to not let her get away with this, is to say, we're going in a new direction. I'm leading in a bold, vision for the future, and trying to be sort of a break from the past. Well, she's been in charge, her administration, for the last 3.5 years. And so many of the problems that she's trying to solve are problems that this administration, her administration, she is responsible for. And so that's the challenge for both campaigns. Can Trump make that stick, where she can't sort of wriggle out of inflation and the economy and all that? Or will the Harris campaign be able to basically portray themselves as offering a new direction? And their slogan is, "We won't go back," and portray Trump as the past and them as the future. It's an interesting dynamic that's at play here over the next 70-something days.
And just finally, on Trump, have most Americans made up their mind about Trump? He's been around for so long. He's been dominating the media, circus for so long. Is his image basically defined? And is this election more about what Americans think of the Democrats?
Yeah, 100%. Trump he's the most polarizing political figure I think we've ever had, certainly in the modern era. There's been nobody close to him. He is a turnout machine, both for his base, for Republican voters, but also for Democrats. Everybody knows him. He has 100% name ID. Everybody has an opinion about him. There's virtually no one who says they don't have an opinion about him. And so and his numbers, by the way, are sort of rock solid. They don't really change. It's all about, do independents, are they leaning towards the Democrats or not? And if they're not, they fall back into an area where they're open to voting for Trump. And so, but for the most part, this election he is very, very well defined, positively and negatively, in the minds of the American public.